Ooh, hello mate, how's it going? And welcome on back to Football Therapy with me, your host Jan. As always, mate, I do hope that you are doing well. Friend, I really do hope that. And of course, welcome back to Chelsea News, which is the daily series here on Football Therapy, where I reflect on what's being said about Chelsea throughout the global footballing media. See Wagwan. Give you my thoughts on it, but more importantly, as always, on the show, ask for yours, because you can comment on YouTube and indeed the podcast platforms you listen to this content on. Today we're speaking a little bit about Millie Bright, which is sort of doffing our cap to her. A bit more on Andoni Iraola. Apparently, Xabi Alonso is the front runner if you were to believe Spanish reports. We'll have a little look at that. An update on the actual manager odds. Of course, big news with Chelsea. The sporting directors have to get it right this time. Interesting London is Blue episode out at the moment with Matt Law and Nick Villaney speaking about this. I'll be interested to reiterate some of the stuff they spoke about. And Chelsea striker Liam Delap unhappy with new proposal. Ooh, it's going to be a juicy one, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to have you here with me for the ride. You and me riding together. Not intimately, maybe more like to battle, more Lord of the Rings, less OnlyFans, more Lord of the Rings. What is happening? Right, so thank you for liking and subscribing, following and 5-starring on your podcast apps. I do genuinely am very appreciative of that. Spotify, I've got over 1,200 5-star reviews. I got to 1,200 really ruddy quickly, and I was like, wow, you guys were amazing. And then they just stopped. So, still yet to get over the 1,300 mark. But if you have Spotify, please search Football Therapy Podcast. Give me a follow and 5-star review, and I'd ask the same for you Apple users on your Apple devices. Look, this content's free. Gosh darn it. And you get it every day. So a little bit of graft from you. Is it too much? No. Thank you for doing that. Right then, you smelly little football goblins. I didn't mean that. We have to look at this and say thank you to Millie Bright. She's announced her retirement from football. Of course, England international, Chelsea superstar. She's seen as captain, leader, legend of the women's team. Rightly so. She's been an incredible servant. 12 years in 414 appearances and 20 trophies. 20 trophies. That is like the John Terry of the women's team. Especially if you think of like they play less games in the women's game and stuff. So to put that kind of shift in, she's been absolutely incredible. Recognised as like the world's best defender at points in the women's game. Deserves a huge amount of credit, and I needed to start the video just by recognition really to Millie. I don't cover the women's team enough. Probably should have done for my mental health a little bit more because of how testing the men's team's been. But ultimately how much almost exclusively men's football. I do watch a little bit of Chelsea women and a little bit of internationals, but in terms of the majority of what I consume, it's much more men's football. Maybe that will change. But congratulations on a wonderful career, Millie Bright. Thank you. Right then, let's dive deep within the friggin' tabloids. It's not really tabloid, but the media sewage, and try and sift our way through what's being said and what's going to happen with my beloved, probably your beloved football club. I do realise I have some viewers that aren't Chelsea fans, but not many. But you're all welcome. Yeah, everyone's welcome aboard the good ship Football Therapy. Yeah, man. So look, we know the three favourites, the three contacted, and this is something Matt Law said. Let's start on this. So Matt Law published an article on the Telegraph, Chelsea correspondent, about Andoni Iraola, Marco Silva, and to the positive response of many Chelsea fans, Xabi Alonso, as managers that have been contacted by Chelsea. The representatives, like, would you be interested in coming in for an interview, yada, yada, yada. And a lot of Chelsea fans sort of got up and listened when they heard Xabi Alonso. I've been pretty consistent long before, Rosinia was in. I said, look, if you watch my content or listen to my content, you will know that I've always said he would be the guy. He'd be like the one you want. And I was just always certain that after Leverkusen, he'd go to his 3 former clubs: Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, Liverpool. Now he went to Real Madrid. He got sacked. I don't think that's a reflection on how much of an appropriate candidate he is for Chelsea. It's just Real Madrid's a circus. Mourinho's going in there, kind of suits the situation perfectly, and they probably need a Mourinho guy. But our Chelsea dressing room needs a modern coach. The players will respect his playing career. Xabi Alonso. But obviously, he's not going to go to Bayern Munich because Vinny Kompany's tearing up. And I don't think Liverpool are actually that interested in bringing him in, which is really fascinating. So if we could get him in over the likes of Liverpool and, he dunks on them, that would be a massive coup for Chelsea. But yes, so anyway, so Matt Law was speaking about this. He's done an interview, Matt Law, before with the sporting directors for the Telegraph when things were going well. Possibly at the beginning of the Maresca era. They sort of, the article's still live as both of them smiling, like talking about their project. So Matt has links to the sporting directors, and he wasn't trying to a lot of people will think, oh, he's matey with them, he gets information from them, therefore he's not going to slag them off. And he did criticise them, but he was also defending them and saying, since they've come in, because they didn't hire Graham Potter, that they've only essentially got one hire wrong, which it's difficult to you listen to him showing his working. He says, look, they see the hiring, even if the Maresca, they didn't sack him, they had one, like Rosenia had 1 win in 9 towards the end of his tenure. Maresca, the players didn't want him to go, but it was bad. We're in bad form, and he kind of sort of set fire to his Chelsea career a little bit. But they look at the hire of Maresca as a demonstrably successful hire, because he's a guy that had one top flight season and it was in the 2nd division of England. They gave him the Chelsea job. He got him in Champions League football and won them 2 trophies. So they would argue this point. But by the way, this is not my words, okay? Because I massively have a big problem with the sporting directors. This is just what Matt Law was saying, okay? So don't think these are not my words for a second. This is what the defense, as it were, he's posing. So he'd say Maresca was what they thought, was a really successful identification and hire from them in their sporting hierarchy. Maresca tried to move the goalposts, therefore the relationship broke down. Now, he also looks at sort of Pochettino as this not necessarily disastrous hire, but like a sort of passable one, because we'd finished 12th under Potter and all that, and which wasn't their hire, and it all went to pot, if you excuse the terminology. So we went from 12th, whatever it was, to 6th. I think we might have got a cup final as well. Was that the billionaire bottlers line? And he did quite well with Cole Palmer. Palmer loved him, and he sort of turned Palmer into a bit of a superstar. And they didn't he only got a 2-year contract anyway, and it was more of they all shook hands, and at the end, and they had if I remember the reporting correctly, it was a 2-day decision from both Pochettino and the hierarchy to split, but there wasn't any animosity, and he sort of bridged them quite nicely, so they wouldn't reflect on Pochettino as a disastrous hire. I mean, I hated the Pochettino era just because we were turned into a brothel at the back. It was just nice watching Palmer. That was about it, really. And they'd basically seen the Rosenia hire as their big mistake. And of course, they've come out with that statement of self-reflection, yada, yada, yada. I mean, and he was eminently a failure, failed appointment. The players didn't take him seriously. They didn't want him. He was eaten up by the job, and it was unfair of the Blue Co to throw him in. We wasn't right, but it was I think there's a lot of sympathy towards Liam. Coming out of this, there's been a lot of ridicule unfairly to what is apparently a really good guy and quite a promising coach that was sort of his employers went, yeah, we're giving you a promotion, we're throwing you in here, and it did feel quite performative. I'm loving every minute of it. It's great. What an opportunity, when clearly it wasn't all great. So that's what Matt Law would say in defense of the sporting directors, that they sort of have one mistake out of 3 permanent hires, and they're reflecting on that. I think that's been quite generous to the sporting hierarchy, and I also think the managerial hire is one thing, and yes, they've made mistakes and they've botched it up a couple of times for me. I just don't feel like they know the right manager to hire, and I think they've screwed up so many transfers. I think they've done significantly more wrong, the Sporting hierarchy, than right. I would give them, I suppose, kudos initially for, I said, the Maresca stuff, for identifying a guy that had the right character and scalability. But even Maresca, like, even his Leicester, he was an imperfect character. He never really connected to all the match-going fans. I'm not going to act like he's this kind of like Tuchel, Conte, Mourinho, Ancelotti figure at Chelsea. He just simply wasn't Enzo Maresca. So, and they've, and what do I like? I always say this. I like Palmer. I like the kind of signings we made under them that we would never have made in the Abramovich era, like a Palmer, Estevao and Santos, these kind of guys. But we're missing the Abramovich era style signings that ensure we do become a serious team. Anyway, let's move on. That was a bit of a long rant, but I wanted to... by the way, I recommend London is Blue. I've been on there a few times. It's a great podcast. Alrighty then. Let's talk about managers then. This is meant to be part of a page. This is caught offside. Iraola's stance on Chelsea job revealed amid rising interest. Lots of interest in the Chelsea job. Following the disastrous short-lived tenure of Liam Rosenior, the Blue Coat ownership is working in overtime to get a new proven top-flight manager. Of course, Iraola, Silva and Xabi Alonso are the three that are being most spoken about and targeted. According to the latest scoop from Football Insider, so I'm reading off an aggregation here. Geez Louise, I'm seeing some of the ads on the side of this. That is not appropriate for a football website. My giddy aunt. Departing Bournemouth. Hold on. Okay, I'm not gonna do it. I paused the recording because I was gonna set up the screen share. Basically, I'm on football. I'm caught offside. There is an Ann Summers, for those of you who know what that is, advertising link, yeah, on a football website. And before you say to me, "Oh, Jan, do you know how targeted ads work?" Well, this is my studio computer, where I only ever look at football websites, and that's all I ever look at anyway. So to have that ad literally next to Iraola's face, I was gonna screen share it, but I thought better of it because I don't want this video to be demonetized. So anyway, just imagine something. Literally, imagine Iraola's face and something incredibly inappropriate next to it. Very funny. Anyway. I've been having too much fun in recent videos. I need to be more professional. On one hand, you're walking into an intensely pressurized, incredibly volatile environment where patience from the boardroom is famously non-existent. Easy job, no? Easy job. On the other hand, it is still Chelsea Football Club, yeah? For a manager like Iraola, who spent a few years performing absolute tactical miracles down on the south coast, the sheer scale of the Stamford Bridge project is attractive. This is the thing, gang. It's still and again, to reference the London is Blue pod with Matt Law, he says, look, Nick Villaney, the host, was like saying, look, man, I don't know how like attractive this job is at the moment, because look how much of a circus it is you run, and like the players are dysfunctional squad, players not playing for the manager, having to like answer to medical teams, Chelsea fans protesting the ownership in the streets. Like, it ain't pretty picture all round at the moment. It's tough. But, you know, Matt Law gave the example of, look at Man United. I mean, they're the biggest club in England, Man United, so there will always be that. But it's still a sort of relatable example, because even throughout their absolute embarrassing banter era, they still never had shortages of managers. It's still Stamford Bridge. It's still, you know, Southwest London, Fulham Broadway, you know, like Cobham and the beautiful Cobham and the Sticks. Good money, high profile, just a club with, like, you know, multiple European trophies. And you could be like the guy to fix them. Look, we've definitely gone very low if we can't convince the Bournemouth manager to join Chelsea. Do you know what I mean? This is when back in the day, Guardiola rejected Chelsea. Abramovich was desperate to bring Pep. Guardiola's spoken about this. He said, "I just don't trust you'll give me the time and support." And the Man City says, "We'll build a whole friggin' hierarchy and team around to prepare for your arrival." You know, so it suited Guardiola. He said no to Chelsea. So look, Pep now would certainly say no to Chelsea. But like, if you're struggling to get the Bournemouth manager in, then you really need to take a look at yours. The self-reflection from the sporting directors will have to be of biblical proportions. Alrighty, let's keep reading this, and we've got a couple more things to do. Gaining access to Blueco's deep transfer war chest. By the way, sorry, I missed this line. The 43-year-old views Chelsea hot seat as a massive career-defining opportunity, which it really should be. Gaining access to Blueco's deep transfer war chest. Well, is there a friggin' deep transfer war chest? Because there's conflicting information of the money's run out. Do they have money? Will there be a war chest? Do you know what I mean? You got some people saying that there just isn't any money, and some people saying, yeah, they'll spend a lot of money. So I have to see. Albeit disjointed, the young global talent is a dream scenario for such an ambitious coach. I mean, look, you're still saying, oh, yeah, do you want to coach Fernandes? Probably Enzo Fernandez, maybe not, we'll see. Fernandes, Caicedo, Estevao, Joao Pedro, Cole Palmer, Santos Lavia, Levi Colwill, Reece James, Mark Cucurella. It's not bad, man. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not like, they are like, okay, these guys can really do something here. So from Chelsea's perspective, the attractive is mutual. They like Andoni Iraola, and I think he is the favourite. He ticks a lot of boxes. His high-octane, heavy pressing system completely transformed Bournemouth into a fearless top-flight outfit. Right, okay. I spoke about this before. The thing with Iraola, he goes on massive streaks of not winning games. So he took 9 games to get a win for Bournemouth when he first came in. I mean, you'd argue Chelsea are a stronger force and it might not take that long. But, he went for 11 games without a win recently. Again, it's Bournemouth, not Chelsea. But Chelsea are capable of going on negative runs with this squad. And how does he translate to being the coach of the protagonist in a match and not a reactive, high-octane reactive side, which is what served him so well? We don't know. Apparently, he has got quite a commanding presence. He speaks Spanish, which apparently in this Chelsea dressing room, you need to. But of course, Xabi Alonso will be able to do that as well. Let's get into this Xabi Alonso story and take a look at the Spanish report then. Here we go. So, this is from TYC Sports, Spain. I don't know why this has gone back to Spanish, so let's translate it to English, please. Enzo Fernandez, close to having a new manager at Chelsea. They're making progress in signing Xabi Alonso. Now, I guess they're reporting on this, TYC Sports. Maybe because... wait, it is Spanish, right? Or maybe it's South American. Hold on, let me check before I just carry on reading. It's Argentinian. So it is Spanish, obviously, or Spanish speaking, but it's Buenos Aires, so that's probably why they're speaking about Enzo Fernandez. I'm so glad I picked up on that before I just carried on like a knobber without context. But this has been an aggregated news, because obviously, we want to know what's going on with Enzo Fernandez. Enzo Fernandez might be trying to throw his weight around in a room in Cobham, saying, if you bring in Xabi Alonso, I'll stay. Even though, he loves Real Madrid, Enzo, and that's the gaffer they sacked. Enzo Fernandez's Chelsea are making progress towards signing Xabi Alonso, the Bundesliga winning manager with Leverkusen, who recently had a disappointing spell at Real Madrid, is emerging as the leading candidate to take over after Rosinia's dismissal. Yeah, of course, we know that he has been contacted. That's been confirmed by briefings to the likes of Matt Law and the Athletic guy. So it's Chelsea are speaking to them. But this Argentinian publication is saying that he's the front runner. McFarlane, of course, was appointed for interim for the second time this year. What a crazy and rather embarrassing club we are. And we're trying to decide on a permanent gaffer. In the meantime, it does also reference the fact that both they wanted to add experience with Premier League experience or trophies. Obviously, Premier League experience, Andoni Iraola and Marco Silva being spoken about a lot here. But Chelsea aren't the only ones interested in signing Alonso. Of course, it's being linked to Liverpool as well, if Arne Slot goes. But I did hear murmurings from like different news sources that because Xabi Alonso plays predominantly like a back three system, which, you know, Chelsea fans don't turn their nose up at. Look, we won the league with Conte and we won the Champions League with Tuchel playing back three systems. We're not like against it as a fan base, but apparently Liverpool hierarchy aren't overly keen on it, so they're not necessarily going to turn to Xabi Alonso. Yeah, I think, look, again, not to sort of beat this dead horse, but I think if a certain character that carries himself and has a certain aura comes into the Chelsea dressing room, players like Enzo Fernandez and Cucurella will just listen. I think Xabi Alonso represents that. So let's talk about the updated odds then. Alright, without screen sharing, because showing the company is probably in trouble. I've already had Ann Summers jump scares today. Right, so remaining as a favourite, but not a runaway favourite, remains the eminently, I was going to say underwhelming, but look, Andoni Iraola, he's still the favourite. He's apparently desperate to come to he wants the job a lot. That's the vibe. I think he is the front runner. I think Chelsea would like him, and I think the Chelsea dressing room would listen to him a little bit more, carry more weight, but he's a little bit underwhelming. He's not going to give the dopamine hit of a couple of others. Xabi Alonso is now comfortably the close second favourite, which is really interesting. And again, this is just markets. This is just what, you know, odds are from what perception is. So this is not definitive. It's just interesting to reference. But as in, like, so unsurprisingly, Marco Silva is the third favourite, but he's pretty close to the fourth favourite, which is Fabregas. So the front two, Xabi Alonso and Iraola, are kind of like a little bit out on their own, if you think of this as a horse race. And then the two, but close together, is Marco Silva and Cesc Fabregas. Fabregas you can get like 5-1, and then Felipe Luis is 5-1 plus. Lampard's in there as well, but everyone expects Lampard to carry on with Coventry in the Premier League. And then you got the likes of your Oliver Glasner's, who I wouldn't really fancy, to be honest. Like, he's more of a reactive back three player, even though he has played back fours in his career previously. And Eddie Howe, 16-1. Eddie Howe's about to get probably sacked from a mid-table Newcastle. He's done good work there, but for me, he'd be like an Ollie Glasner sort of underwhelming signing. Marco Silva is interesting. He's won trophies in like non-top 5 leagues. He's got lots of Premier League experience, probably the most out of all the candidates. Watford, Everton, Fulham. And he does have a certain amount. He's quite commanding. Like, people apparently, like, when you're in a room with him, he's sort of, again, got a bit of an aura. They used to call him the mini Mourinho. But again, it's just a mid-table mediocrity, underwhelming signing for me. It'd be a bit more like, maybe it's, you know, in a way, I was more excited with Rosinia, who was a much bigger bet, just because I liked him, and I thought it was like refreshing, you know, young English manager. Young black manager as well, a guy that's just been in France, and it was like, just go and prove him wrong. And I was quite, you know, backing him, but it just didn't work. But you look at, I think someone like Marco Silva in the Chelsea dressing room would be far more commanding than Rosinia, you know, and that's why we're here. But again, I'd probably prefer Marco Silva over like a Glasner or a Howe. But, you know, I'd probably Iraola over all that Premier League middle class. But again, for me, the two exciting potential managers remain Xabi Alonso and Cesc Fabregas. Xabi Alonso looks like there's an interestingly high chance in what's being said. And Fabregas, an outside chance. But things could change. Right, let's speak about the last story of today's content then. Oh, excuse me. Just burping into the microphone. There we go. Liam Delap, off the Chelsea Chronicle, Sport.com. Chelsea unhappy with Liam Delap as striker rejects new proposal. Right, Luke Randall writes, Delap's future has reached a tense stalemate with the young striker turning down new approaches surrounding his future. Of course, he's found himself behind the informed Joao Pedro. Looks really good. He's had recent performances highlight lack of confidence. It's been a disaster season for him, hasn't it? Confidence, injury, form, all of it causing issues. And of course, the imminent arrival of Emmanuel Omega from Strasbourg. There are doubts over whether he has a long-term future at Stamford Bridge. Now, according to Simon Phillips, who I believe wrote on this Substack, he's turned down a move to Strasbourg. I mean, him to Strasbourg was just always going to be, always going to be a thing, wasn't it? Are Strasbourg going to qualify for Europe next season? Let me just quickly see. I mean, they're playing in the Conference League. If they win the Conference League, they'll be in the Europa League. They're 8th currently. They are. Yeah, I don't think they will. They're kind of 10 points. Oh, they're 7 points off Conference League qualification. Yeah. They do have a game in hand, so maybe they might sneak into the Conference League or something. But if they win the Conference League, which they could do, I think it'll be a Palace-Strasbourg final, I think. Then that would be a great achievement. And, they'll be in the Europa League, and Liam Delap being a starting striker for a Europa League club probably be about right. He needed to scale up from Ipswich, but he just made the wrong decision to come to Chelsea. Chelsea made the wrong decision to sign him, like they did Alejandro Garnacho. They are two what they deem market opportunities that have been just demonstrably failed transfers, if you ask me. Maybe they both have. Maybe Garnacho's contributed a little bit. Delap's been unlucky, so it would be hard to completely judge them with everything on that. Maybe I might be a bit unfair, and also in a turbulent atmosphere, but still, you can still shine. You can still do what friggin' Joao Pedro did, or so it's not really like the greatest of excuses. Certainly maybe with Garnacho, but Delap has been injured. But I do feel bad. I basically feel bad for him. He did have other offers, high-profile offers. He chose Chelsea. I think Chelsea should sell him, try and get the money back to a club that suits him, because he's not, for me now, he's not even at the point where you stick him on loan, develop him for another year or two. He comes back 25, ready to just start for Chelsea for a few years as a proper, blood and thunder number 9, scoring goals, holding up play, because I think he'll always suit that transitional style of play. Maybe if he was in confidence, there's certain game plans where we set up that he would really suit if he was in full fitness and form and confidence, and he'd, smash teams on the break and score like he did against Barcelona and stuff. But I think it's too many ifs, buts, and he deserves to just go and be a starting striker at a relatively high-profile club and try and get into the England team, and obviously not the World Cup, but for the Euros. Tuchel will still be in charge for the Euros, use the next 2 seasons, play well. Ollie Watkins will be too old. Kane will probably still be starting for England. He just feels like he might go on for a while. But you can be in that conversation, like Dom Solanke and Watkins will fade away. Welbeck would certainly fade away. You're a lot younger than the likes of Calvert-Lewin, Make that second spot after Kane yours, and not just that, be ready to take over to be Chelsea's starting number 9, which sounds crazy considering Liam Delap's form, but this is what he needs to aim for psychologically to develop his career. Do you know what I mean? So why the ruddy heck not? Go for it. And I think Chelsea's got Omega, Joao Pedro. Nico Jackson, is open to coming back. Bayern Munich have confirmed they're not going to be keeping him after the loan, which is a bit shock horror. But, Chelsea will still reflect on the loan as quite good. I think they made a record amount of money in loan fees and had his wages paid by them. And he won the Bundesliga and might get a Champions League medal. So even though he's not starting that many games, I'm sure it's an experience regardless. So I'm sure he'll be fine. Alright, gang, well, that's it from me today. Thank you for joining me. Thank you, as always, for liking and subscribing on YouTube, for following and 5-starring on your preferred podcast platforms. I'm very grateful for your continued support. Hopefully, Chelsea can turn the fortunes around of this muddled football club and we can be whole again. Alright, mate, take care of yourselves. Peace.